in Seconds, a movie that may have been a little ahead of its time, a little too brutal for the 60s, but now everybody's rediscovering it. Paramount finally released it on video this past summer. In fact, it was recently remade by Gary Flater, the guy who directed Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. But John Frankenheimer still does not like the picture, but most everybody else thinks it's a classic. You know what John Frankenheimer does like? The movies he makes for TNT, like Andersonville and Wallace, which just came out. All right, next week our Monster Vision feature is Friday the 13th, the final chapter, which of course was not the final chapter, but we won't go into that now. Because I'm done, I can go home. This was a grueling evening. I tell you guys about how I went through this little Texas town recently where they'd put up a nativity scene. And it was a pretty good rendering of the manger at Bethlehem. Only there was one strange thing about it that bothered me. The three wise men were all wearing firemen's hats. So as I was leaving the town, I pulled over to the Quick Stop, and I asked the lady behind the counter about the fire helmets. And she said, well, what's wrong with you? Don't you read the Bible? And I said, yeah, I read the Bible. What's that have to do with fire hats? So she pulls this Bible out from under the counter, and she looks up the passage that she wants, and she points at it. She shoves it in my face, and she says, look, right here, what it says. Three wise men come from afar. Joe Bob Briggs reminding you that the drive-in will never die. Screwed up that punchline, didn't I? All right, a fashion photographer and Cindy Crawford have to crash land on a desert island. Right? A few weeks pass by, it looks like they're never going to be rescued, so the photographer confesses to Cindy that he's getting a little starved for sex. Right, a few more weeks pass by, finally Cindy realizes the same thing and confesses that the photographer is looking pretty good to her too. So they make love several times a day for weeks. So one day Cindy walks out to the beach to find the photographer sitting there forlornly staring out to sea. She asks if there's anything she can do for him, and he says, well, I know this may sound strange, but do you have an eyebrow pencil with you? And she says, yes. And he says, well, I know this is going to sound strange too, but would you mind painting a mustache on your lip? And Cindy says, well, no, not if it'll help you. It's just you and me on this godforsaken island anyway. So she paints a mustache on her lip. Then the photographer says, that's great. Now, will you do me one more favor? And she says, sure. And he says, I know this is going to sound weird too, but would you mind terribly if I called you Bob? And Cindy says, well, there's nobody but us here. If you're sure it will help you, okay, you can call me Bob. So the photographer says, that's great. Thanks a lot. So they sit there. A few minutes pass. Finally, he leans over to Cindy and he says, Bob? And Cindy says, yes. And he says, you're never going to believe who I'm sleeping with.
Tomorrow night at 8, there are some secrets that should never be told. Step into the dark world of Dolores Claiborne, starring Kathy Bates, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Christopher Plummer. The new classics are on TNT. Coming up, settle in for zombies, witch doctors, and voodoo. Beware the four skulls of Jonathan Drake. Next on TNT.